Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pari Vrajagacharya Asto Tara Satta Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I'm sorry. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
And Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaura Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to our continued study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the first canto, 13th chapter, and today's text is number 15. Abhibrad Aryamadandam Yatavad Agakarishu Yavad Dadhara Shudratvam Shapad Varsha Satam Yamaha. Abhibrad Aryamadandam Yatavad Agakarishu Yavad Dadhara Shudratvam Shapad Varsha Satam Yamaha. Abhibrad Aryamadandam Yatavad Aghakarishu Yavad Dadhara Shudratvam Shapad Varsha Satam Yamaha. Please chant.
Abhidrad Aryamadandam Yatavad Agakarishu Yavadadara Sudratvam Shupad Varsha Satam Yamaha.
Hare Krishna. Abhibrade Aryamadandam Yathavad Agakarisu Yavad Dadhara Sudratvam Sapada Varsa Satam Yamaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Abhibhadreyarma dandam avadhagakarishu yavadhar shudtvam shapadarsha shatam yamaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Abhibadradyamādandam yathavadadakarishu yavattara shudratvam shapad varsha shatam yamaha. Hare Krishna.
Abhiprad Aryamadandam Yatavad Aghakarishu Yavad Dadhara Shudratvam Shapad Varsha Satam Yama. Hare Krishna.
अबिभ्रत् आर्यमादण्डं यथावदगकारिषु यावदधर शूद्रध्वं शापद्वर्षशतं यमः. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Abhibrad Aryama Dandam Yatavad Aga Karishu Yavad Dadhara Shudratvam Shapad Varsha Shatam Yamaha. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Anyone else?
Krishna. Abhiradaryamadandam yatavadagakarishu yavadadra sadratvam shapadvarsa satam yama.
Abhibrat, administered. Aryama, Dandam, punishment. Yatavat, as it was suitable. Agha karishu, unto persons who had committed sins. Yavat, as long as. Dadhara, accepted. Shudratvam, the tabernacle of a Shudra. Shapat, as the result of a curse. Varsha Shatam, for 100 years. Yamaha, Yamaraj. Translation. Pardon me. As long as Vidura played the part of a Shudra, being cursed by Manduka Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts. Purport. Vidura, pardon me. Sorry. Vidura, born in the womb of a Shudra woman, was forbidden even to be a party of royal heritage along with his brothers, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Then how could he occupy the post of a preacher to instruct such learned kings and kshatriyas as Dhritarashtra and Maharaj Yudhishthir? The first answer is that even though it is accepted that he was a Shudra by birth, because he renounced the world for spiritual enlightenment by the authority of Rishi Maitreya and was thoroughly educated by him in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to occupy the post of an acharya, or spiritual preceptor. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyone who is conversant in the transcendental knowledge or the science of Godhead, be he a Brahmana or a Shudra, a householder or a sannyasi, is eligible to become a spiritual master. Even in the ordinary moral codes maintained by Chanakya Pandit, the great politician and moralist, there is no harm in taking lessons from a person who may be by birth less than a Shudra. This is one part of the answer. The other is that Vidura was not actually a Shudra. He was to play the part of a so-called Shudra for 100 years, being cursed by Manduka Muni. He was the incarnation of Yamaraj, one of the 12 Mahajans, on the level with such exalted personalities as Brahma, Narad, Shiva, Kapila, Bhishma, Prahlad, etc. Being a Mahajan, it is the duty of Yamaraj to preach the cult of devotion to the people of the world, as Narada, Brahma, and other Mahajans do. But Yamaraj is always busy in his Plutonic kingdom, punishing the doers of sinful acts. Yamaraj is deputed by the Lord to a particular planet some hundreds of thousands of miles away. from the planet of Earth, to take away the corrupt souls after death and convict them in accordance with their respective sinful activities. Thus, Yamaraj has very little time to take leave from his responsible office of punishing the wrongdoers. There are more wrongdoers than righteous men. Therefore, Yamaraj has to do more work than other demigods who are also authorized agents of the Supreme Lord. But he wanted to preach the glories of the Lord, and therefore, by the will of the Lord, he was cursed by Manduka Muni to come into the world in the incarnation of Vidura and work very hard as a great devotee. Such a devotee is neither a Shudra nor a Brahmana. He is transcendental to such divisions of mundane society, just as the personality of Godhead assumes his incarnation as a hog, but he is neither a hog nor a Brahma. He is above all mundane creatures. The Lord and his different authorized devotees sometimes have to play the role of many lower creatures to claim the conditioned souls. But both the Lord and his pure devotees are always in the transcendental position. When Yamaraj thus incarnated himself as Vidura, his post was officiated by Aryama, one of the many sons of Kashyapa and Aditi. The Adityas are the sons of Aditi, and there are 12 Adityas. Aryama is one of the 12 Adityas, and therefore it was quite possible for him to take charge of the office of Yamaraj during his 100 years absent in the form of Vidura. The conclusion is that Vidura was never a Shudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. I'll read that translation again. As long as Vidura played the part of a Shudra, being cursed by Manduka Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminate Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Vicharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatare Om Ajnana Tamirandasya Ajnana Ajnana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Petitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So today we're going to talk about the qualities and behavior of the devotee. So as we've been reading, Vidura is none other than Mahatma Yamaraj, and he came down due to a curse. Now, of course, devotees, when a curse is involved, devotees always see that as a blessing. And so Yamaraj is no different here. He sees this curse as an opportunity to take a small break from his service of punishing wrongdoers, of which Srila Prabhupada mentions there are more wrongdoers than people who do the right thing. So he takes it as an opportunity to take a small vacation from that and to go and preach. Because what Mahatma doesn't want to preach, there's not much preaching that goes on in the hellish planets. There's reformation, of course. There's not a whole lot of preaching. There's a little bit, not a lot. So what I want to talk about today, as I mentioned, is the qualities and characteristics of a devotee. Because we see from Vidura's example, there are so many things that we as aspiring Vaishnavas can learn. And so the first thing that I wanted to point out is just right from this verse. This verse is just saying that when Yamaraj took this 100-year break from his duties there in the hellish planets, that Aryama was the one who accepted that post, right? Who took over, because it has to go on. It's not like all of a sudden, okay, everybody take a break from doing terrible things because there's no punishment right now. Give it 100 years and then or wait in line, whatever. It's not like that. Everything must go on. And so Aryama was there to step up and take charge of this particular service. Now, just this, we can see that Yamaraj, or Vidura, we're talking in this case, but the personality of Yamaraj is a great devotee, because when this happens, he doesn't fight it. First of all, like I said, he sees it as a preaching opportunity, or as Srila Prabhupada pointed out. He doesn't say, hey, wait a second, Aryama, sure, he's a nice guy, but he hasn't been trained to do this. He doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe I should show him the ropes. There's so many different planets where so many different things are happening. What if these guys that are swimming in the river of stool, what if they accidentally are falling off the cliffs into the razor sharp tree branches and getting their eyeballs caught on them? And it's a delicate thing, the system that I've worked out. So there has to be some training. No, nothing like that. He understood. Okay, Aryama's here. He's going to do his thing. He doesn't say, wait a second, sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. Yeah, sure, someone committed this sin, and this is the reaction, and it fits hand in hand. It's not always that easy. For example, some time ago, the Yamadutas went to pick someone up for punishment. He was a really sinful person, but at the time of death, he called out his son's name, which happened to be Narayan. And so there was a little altercation there between my men and Lord Vishnu's men, and there was confusion. So I had to work all that out. It's not just as cut and dry. It's not an easy thing always. Sometimes there are things that come up. No, he didn't say any of that. He understood. Okay, this is what I'm doing. Now I'm doing the 100-year Shudra thing. Everything's in good hands. This is called detachment. This is what a devotee does. A devotee will always do their best to perform the service to their utmost ability. They'll always try their hardest. They'll always put their best effort forward, and they're always going to try to please Krishna in the most favorable way that they can. But if the service is all of a sudden taken away, then there's detachment. Or if the result of the service is somehow not what is expected, a devotee is not affected by that. So we see that in this example, where Yamaraj, he's not affected. He's not attached, materially attached to a service. He does the service very well. It's a service that who would want to even do that? He as a Vaishnava is par dukkha dukhi. The sufferings of others cause him great suffering. And so to see all these people suffering, I mean, they deserve it, but at the same time, nobody wants to put anybody through that, let alone a Vaishnava. So this is one of those thankless tasks that Yamaraj does. So that's his duty. He reforms, so that's what he's doing. But now he sees, okay, now I get a break. I get to preach, thankfully, due to this curse. And so the position of Yamaraj then is taken up by Aryama, and he leaves it. He's gone. He doesn't give it a second thought. He knows, okay, Krishna is in control. Everything's in good hands. So that's the first thing. That's the first quality that we're seeing here of a Vaishnava, right? So then we see that he's a great devotee. He's a Mahatma, Mahajan, and there aren't many examples of those in the world. It's very rare, and so he's put into a situation where it's not just that he's a Shudra, because being a Shudra, that's whatever, you could live in a gutter and you're surrounded by people that are living in gutters, and big deal. You know, if you're a devotee, you can tolerate such things. It's not a problem at all. But this is a very unique situation that Vidura was put in, because he was born of a Shudra, but he was also born in a royal family. So he's surrounded by royalty and everything that goes along with being royalty, but he is unable to reap the benefits of that, right? So it's not just like he's surrounded by a bunch of people living in gutters. His own brothers are kings. You know, they have all these royal amenities, and he, you know, being the son of a maidservant, he doesn't get to enjoy those on the same level, right? And so that tends to be, as far as for a materialist goes, that tends to be even more torturous, right? Where you can actually see something that's nice, but you don't have access to it, right? It's one thing to, you know, just not have anything, but to not have anything but see something that most people are striving for. That's a whole different thing. But he's tolerant, right? So, you know, it doesn't faze him in any way. He's just there doing his duty. And then, you know, they grow up, and the family is engaged in this feud, and some of the family members are acting very adharmic. They are cheating. They are plotting against their other family members. Now, this is the sort of thing that Yamaraj, he punishes, yeah? And so he could be seeing, you know, and taking note, oh, this, just wait, because this is what's going to happen, right? I know, because I put people through this. But he's not doing like that. He sees that some of his family, they're not behaving properly. And so, you know, he sees Arjuna and Krishna over there, and he says, hey, by the way, you know that house that, you know, you guys are about to go on vacation to? It's kind of flammable. So, you know, you might want to just, you know, keep an eye on that, right? And so throughout the whole process, he's serving the devotees and serving Krishna, no matter what the circumstance is, right? So this is another quality and characteristic of a devotee, is even when faced with very difficult circumstances, some would even call them impossible circumstances, to be subject to these things, to see people trying to torment the devotees like that. And he just tolerates, he stays where he is, and he, you know, gives fair warning to those, so nothing happens like that. I don't know. So he's very tolerant, right? Full faith in Krishna. He, you know, like I said, when he left that post, he just had full faith in Krishna that, okay, you know, everything, not a blade of grass moves without his will, so everything will be taken care of. Completely dependent on Krishna. He wasn't thinking, you know, oh no, who's going to take care of this service that I was doing, right? No, it's complete dependence on Krishna. And he's detached. He has unwavering devotion, even being put in very difficult circumstances. His devotion it didn't waver at all. He led by example. So when he was then sort of driven out of the palace, he decided, okay, I'm gonna go on pilgrimage, right? That's what a devotee does, right? A devotee goes on pilgrimage. So it's not that a devotee gets in a circumstance and he has nowhere to go. A devotee always has somewhere to go. So he goes and travels, and he goes on pilgrimage, and he meets saintly persons, namely, namely Maitreya Rishi. And so he takes instruction from him. Now, here's one of those things where this is an example that really hits all of us, right? And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself also did this. So Yamaraj is already a Mahajan, right? A great soul. And so Vidura is a great soul. He doesn't need to receive instruction from anybody because he understands the philosophy completely. He can explain it to anybody. But he follows the Vedic process. The Vedic process is you inquire from the spiritual master, and you do so in a very, first of all, you make sure it's a bona fide spiritual master, and you inquire from them in a very submissive way. You render service unto them. Bhagavad Gita 4:34 tells us how to do this process, right? And so he did that. As he's on his pilgrimage, he meets with Maitreya Rishi, and he inquires from him, and he learns the essence of the Bhagavatam, the same lessons that Krishna preached to Lord Brahma, right? Pardon, sorry. And so I mentioned Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did the same thing. So when the Lord came down to this material world in the mood of a devotee, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the mood not of only just any devotee, but in the mood of Srimati Radharani, which again, she doesn't need instructions from anyone, right? He doesn't need any instructions from anybody, nor does she. They understand the philosophy quite well, obviously. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, now of course there was, right when he advented, everyone was chanting because of the eclipse. And so in one sense, you can say that even from his advent, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was preaching, it was the circumstance that made everyone chant, and then it added to the atmosphere. So that was nice. And also when baby Nimai was there, when the village ladies would come to visit, which is the thing that village ladies do when there's a new baby, they go and they see and they bring little presents. And so he would just sit there and cry unless these ladies would chant Hari Hari, right? And so he got the nickname Gaura Hari. So in that sense, he was also preaching a little bit there. But otherwise, and we read this from Chaitanya Bhagavat, because Chaitanya Charitamrita, you go through the Adi Lila. So first there's these about 14, it's sort of like invocation verses, right? At the beginning of Adi Lila. And then after that, to the next several chapters, at the end of that first chapter and the next several chapters, they're commentaries on those initial 14 or so verses, right? And so there's several chapters that are just, it's Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj giving his own purports to the verses that he compiled at the beginning of Adi Lila. And then after that, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj gives us what's known as the Chaitanya tree, the tree of devotion. There are a few chapters where it's described how Lord Chaitanya spread this movement through his devotees. Each of the devotees are different trunks and branches and sub-branches like that. And then the Krishna consciousness movement expands like that. And Lord Chaitanya is the gardener and the tree. And then at the end of Adi Lila, we see there's 5 chapters that just go through the 5 stages of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life before he takes sannyas. And there aren't many pastimes that are given in those. There's those 5 age groups. There are a few. And the reason is because in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Vrindavan Das Thakur, it was known as Chaitanya Mangala at the time, but Vrindavan Das Thakur, he's already described in so much detail the childhood and youth and all those pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj didn't want to really repeat anything. So he just gave highlights of those age groups, right? But when we read Chaitanya Bhagavat, we see that when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was young, he didn't do much preaching. He actually, he was highly intelligent. There were certain circumstances where, like, the Brahmana came and he was doing the offering to his deity, and Lord Chaitanya kept eating it. And then eventually he revealed himself to that Brahmana, who he really was. But he made sure that was kept a secret, right? And so he didn't really spread his glory for the most part. So he was a he was a logician and a grammarian. So he taught grammar and logic. And what was common then, especially in Navadvip, where this was like a capital of learning, right? So he would go around and just challenge people, right, to debates, and he would always win. even as a child. And some people would actually avoid him because he would just always win, and they knew there was no hope. So even some devotees were avoiding him, right? Because they didn't want to be embarrassed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Nimai at the time, Nimai Pandit, right? And so even some of the devotees, they would observe Nimai Pandit, and they would say, man, if he only became a devotee, his potency, his shakti, his ability to convince people, if he became a devotee, everyone in the world would become a devotee like that. So that observation was made. But it wasn't until after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father, Jagannath Mishra, passed away, and Lord Chaitanya went to Gaya to perform the Shraddha ceremonies, where he met his spiritual master, Ishvarapuri, and took initiation. Then only after that, he started preaching, right? So then all of his grammar lessons were revolved around names of Krishna, instead of talking about the laws of grammar in the traditional way. He would talk about them using Krishna's names and pastimes to explain how these rules of grammar work, right? And then he's, started with the Sankirtan movement like that. So first it was at Srivasa's house, and it was closed off. Only certain people were allowed to go there and listen to the kirtan. And then gradually they took it to the streets and then spread it to everyone. So the point is that Lord Chaitanya, in his form of a devotee, he didn't go out and preach until he formally went through and learned from his spiritual master. And we see that example was also shown by Yamaraj in his form of Vidura. Vidura, he went and traveled and was doing pilgrimage, and when he saw a self-realized soul, Maitreya Muni, he then inquired from him, and then he took instructions like that. And then so this is what a devotee does. Even great souls and the Supreme Lord himself will go through this process to show that this is how it's done. It's not done any other way. Just because you know something doesn't mean you go say it. You go and you learn it from someone in the disciplic succession, and you follow their example because that's what's done. Because otherwise you're showing a bad example. He could just go and preach to anyone, right? He has the qualification, he has the knowledge. But if he did that without first going and learning from a spiritual master, people would think, okay, well then you don't need a spiritual master. Anyone can just profess whatever they want, and that's bona fide because see, Vidura did it, Lord Chaitanya did it. No, they didn't do that, and that's the exact reason they didn't, because anyone that wants to speak from authority should first hear from authority, even if they are already an authority. Doesn't matter, you go and you hear. So that's another quality that he's showing, this inquiring from authority, leading by example, having faith in the bona fide guru, adherence to the Shastra, because that's what the process is, humility, right? Being in that situation where he's born in a Shudra family, even though he's much higher. Even Srila Prabhupada said he's even transcendental to a Brahmana, right? So, but he has that humility. He doesn't fight any of it, right? And then, of course, Vidura is a dutiful disciple. After he's learned, it's not just, pardon me, it's not just that he learns from a spiritual master and then he uses that knowledge for himself to progress. No, he wants to help others progress. And he's not just helping those who are, already pious or already sort of on the right path. He's helping those who tortured him throughout his whole life, who were completely, who treated him wrong, right? He goes back to his brother and he wants to preach to him because he wants to make sure, okay, listen, this is what you got to do with your life, with the rest, what little is left of your life, this is what you should do, right? And so that's what he does. He comes back and then he's preaching to his brother. That's another quality, is being a dutiful disciple and a compassionate preacher, right? And then, of course, constant absorption in Krishna. The whole time, he was unwavered in his devotion, and he had complete dependence on Krishna, always focused on Krishna. So just seeing the life of Vidura and of Yamaraj, we can see so many different qualities that that we can learn from. So many examples that he gives. That if we were to follow these examples, we would be in much better shape in our devotional practice, right? So let's see. I'm just gonna. So I wrote down a few of these qualities and behaviors, and I said a few of them, but then I sort of explained them. So I just want to go through the list again before we stop, because these are important to understand. And of course, when we read through this list, sometimes we'll see a quality, right? And a quality in itself isn't necessarily a good thing in general. The quality is only good if it's properly situated in Krishna consciousness, right? So say, for example, humility, right? Humility is a good quality, right? But if the humility isn't engaged in Krishna's service, then it's just another material quality, and it will bind us to the material world. Anyway, so I'm gonna go through this list, and then maybe we'll talk about how sometimes these things can be also misapplied, right? So there's detachment. So that one right off the bat, detachment. We see that Yamaraj, he was detached by this whole thing. There was the curse, and he didn't try to fight it. He didn't try to, he didn't say, this whole place is gonna, who can run this but me? What's our Yama gonna do? He's not done this before. He's just going to be in there with no training whatsoever. And now he's completely detached. He understands, okay, this is what's going on. I get the curse. It's from a Brahmana. That's, you don't counteract that. You just do it, right? So the detachment is there. Now, detachment in itself isn't necessarily a good thing. It is in Yamaraj's case, of course, because detachment means that he's detached from the material world, but it also means that he's attached to Krishna, right? He's always performing service to Krishna. You can be detached from the material world and not be attached to Krishna. That's a possibility. This is what Brahmavadis actually aspire for. They want to detach themselves from the material world because they see it as just just a shadow, no substance whatsoever. It's just a shadow. But they don't understand what the spiritual world is. They don't understand what the actual substance is, right? They assume that what is described as the spiritual world, since it also has form and qualities and pastimes, that it has to be just as miserable as this material world, just as miserable and temporary. Because our experience in the material world of form is that it's temporary and of, like that. So they figure, okay, well then the opposite of that is true of transcendence. It can't have any form, it can't have any pastimes like that, because these things are material and they're miserable. So you can be detached, but still not be connected to Krishna, right? And so it's important that when we read about these qualities, that we don't just aspire for the qualities in and of themselves, but we aspire to those qualities in relation to our service to Krishna. So detachment. That was the first one. And then I talked about full faith in Krishna and complete dependence on Krishna. So these are obviously, right in the names, they're talking about the relationship with Krishna. So these, they're already linked in just by the way I worded them. But if you just say faith, right? Just faith, not full faith in Krishna, but just faith. Faith isn't necessarily in and of itself a great thing either. You can have faith in all sorts of things, right? And if you put your faith in the wrong thing, then it will actually be detrimental to one's spiritual progress, right? So each of these qualities that I list, we see that in the case of Vidura, Yamaraj, that all of these things are connected properly to Krishna. And that's what we should do too. We shouldn't just go for these qualities and try to develop them within ourselves, but we should actually try to develop them with that connection to Krishna, right? So then unwavering devotion. Again, you can be steadfast. You can have unwavering devotion to many different things, but we want to have them to Krishna. Then we have lead by example. We see the Vidura led by example through all of the different activities that he performed. He inquired from an authority, right? Even though he knew everything, he's already a Mahajan. He already knows everything and can instruct anyone in the process of devotional service. He still inquired from an authority, right? Because that is an eternal principle that we are to abide by. This is the process. Faith in a bona fide guru, humility. I think we already talked about humility. Adherence to Shastra. Again, that's also why he inquired from authority, because that's how the Shastra tells us that we should do. He was a dutiful disciple, right? So he inquired submissively, he rendered service, and then he went out and spread that word. So it's not just that he used it for himself, but he also gave to others. He was a compassionate preacher. He didn't just preach to those who were sort of already on the path and, in decent shape. He preached to everyone. and his constant absorption in Krishna. So yeah, this is a really nice list of qualities and characteristics of Vidura that we can all learn from. Another thing that I appreciated of Vidura in the last few days, we were talking about how he returned and how he was received and what his mission was. Of course, he's there to preach to his brother so that he doesn't have to suffer the fate that he at that point deserved, so that he could counteract all and become focused. Because Dhritarashtra, there was a lot of bad association that contributed to him acting the way he did. So good association will help him with that. So this is what Vidura was doing. But one thing that was mentioned, of course, was that Vidura at the time didn't want to spread the news of the fall of the Yadu dynasty, right? And so one thing I appreciated about that, of course, there was the aspect that you shouldn't give bad news to people just to sour their mood. There's that. But also, Vidura understood that this would get, actually, it would not only would it be unpleasant, but it would also get in the way of his current mission. His mission was to preach to his brother, Dhritarashtra, right? And to people in general. And so if that news was shared, then it would have been a whole very different thing, right? And then not only that, but he understood, and this is one of those beautiful things about the Pandavas that I've always appreciated, is that when Krishna left this material world, when he wound up his pastimes here, he made sure that the burdens of the earth were taken care of. So first there was the battle of Kurukshetra, where the powerful warriors from both sides were devastated, right? And so that was taken care of. Kali Yuga was on its way. You can't have these, powerful kings that can live forever, So they're all taken out. Then the Yadu dynasty was taken out with this, because of the curse, this whole ruse, the iron filings into the cane, like that. Everybody knows the story. And then, Krishna did his own exit strategy. But for the Pandavas, he knew he didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to take them out in any way, because he knew as soon as the Pandavas found out that Krishna was no longer there, that they would do the right thing. They would travel north and they would retire, and they would leave their bodies. He knew that there was no danger of them sticking around and mucking with the progression of the age of Kali like that. He knew, okay, this is just what they'll do. So that's just one very sweet point that we see that Krishna has his hand in winding everything down, but he knew he didn't have to do that with the Pandavas, because the Pandavas, they don't want to live in a world without Krishna anyway. So they knew it was time, and then that's what they did. So that was another reason why Vidura didn't say anything. He knew he didn't need to, but his mission was to preach to his brother. So that's what the focus was, and so that's what he did. Okay, so I'll stop here, see if there are any questions or comments. But we should definitely meditate on these different qualities and characteristics of Vidura, and try to develop these within ourselves. And most importantly, as we're trying to develop them, we should make sure that each of these qualities is properly connected to Krishna's service, just the way Viduras are. Okay, so do we have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna devotees, if anybody has questions, please just unmute yourself and go ahead. Very nice points, Prabhu, in the way you connected it. That we should connect everything, every single quality to Krishna, was very nicely explained. The one thing that I was thinking, and I think about a lot, is you said Yamaraj did this as a Vaishnava. He did his duty as Yamaraj, correcting people, reforming them. He did not think about what the service is. Is it a good service? Is it a bad service? It is a service that needed to get done. But I cannot sing. Absolutely, I cannot sing. So that's one thing I will not take on. And I'm always talking about this in Sunday school also, is each one of us has a strength. There is something we can all do for Krishna, and there are some things we cannot do. So, and both of them are needed. Like, say, for instance, we want to take on a capital project. We need Lakshmi for it. We need the physical labor for it. We need the intelligence. So each one of us has something we can do. Is it okay then to say, I'm not good at that, so I won't? Or
yeah,
you're always talking about don't get stuck on the the ritual, but think about so is it okay to think like that? Or
yeah, so here's the thing. We're meant to engage our nature in Krishna service. So whatever we have the proclivity to do, that's what we should do. Now, but there is also the doing the needful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes aspiring devotees have to step out of their comfort zone in order to do something to serve Krishna. And that's good too. That shouldn't be the default, though. It shouldn't be that, if I'm just not good at something, like you mentioned capital project, I can't raise money for anything ever, no matter what I do. Like I used to, back in the day, I could work a job and, get money. But anytime I tried to make money sort of, even and it was for a project too. It wasn't even, I'm trying to make money for myself. But anytime I tried, it just didn't, it didn't work. Right. And that's because I don't have that in me, that whole thing. And it's funny too, because I even tried to do it in a very logical way with Krishna. So I tried to sort of make these understandings and deals with Krishna. So for a while, the job that I had was I was an artist. I would do art, and then I would make whatever amount of money, and I was doing okay with it. And so I thought, well, I'm already doing art, the money's obviously coming from Krishna because it can't come from anyone else. It's not coming from my clients or my customers. No, it's coming from Krishna. So I tried to do a couple other projects because I didn't really like the art that I was doing. It was very indirect, and I was trying to make it more direct. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just do art of Krishna. So I'm still doing art, and Krishna is still the one that's giving the money, that where it's coming from. But I was trying to do it more on my terms, and in my eyes, I was trying to do it more directly because I was doing a job that didn't really have a direct link to Krishna. I was using the profits for Krishna service. But each of these things I tried to do that were more directly, art for Krishna, not just art and then use the fruits. And I thought, well, Krishna's in control, so he's giving this much money for this kind of art, then I could get it for that kind of art. But that's not how it worked. And I tried it several different ways, right, to try to become more directly involved in Krishna service. But the issue, and it wasn't that process can't work. It's not that was a bad idea to try to do. It was, for me, I was trying to control the situation. I didn't want to do this artwork anymore. I wanted to do this artwork anymore. And just because it was more connected to Krishna, it didn't mean that in my head, I was more connected to Krishna, right? I was just trying to, I was attempting to be in control. I wasn't detached like Yamaraj was there when his service was, taken away and he had to go do something else. No, I'm the kind of person, my conditioning is that, when I'm at a job, and obviously I try the best I can to do, to make everything go smoothly. And so I'm always the guy that's like, if I left this place, it would fall apart, right? Because nobody else is doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And so that's how I always was. And that's not a good thing. That's you might think that sounds like a good quality, being able to, go over and beyond what's expected. But it's not if you think you're in control. And I did. I thought I was in control. And I thought I had a handle on the situation. So it wasn't until I realized, and this came from studying Srimad Bhagavatam, that I had to step back from that idea that I'm in control of what's going on here. And I even knew that Krishna was in control, but I wasn't acting as like that. I was trying to steer these things in a very specific way, in a very specific Charu Chandra way, not a Krishna way. It was Krishna adjacent, of course, because that's what the goal was. But the focus was there. I was trying to do that. And so it wasn't until through Srimad Bhagavatam, actually Bhishma Dev's instructions, where I was able to finally step back from that aspect of my life. And then, I just retired from working because it was just, it was a trip. So I know that I'm not good at that sort of thing, making money. So I just don't engage in that anymore. I don't work anymore. Right? I don't do that game. And since then, Krishna's provided whatever needs to be provided. So that's what the thing is. So even if we're good at something, if we're not connecting it with Krishna, we also shouldn't be doing that. Or we should do it in such a way that, we should redirect that. The point is that no matter what it is, our consciousness should be directed towards serving Krishna. So you said that you can't sing, right? But in some circumstances, you kind of have to, right? You're at the Sunday school, and sometimes the song needs to be sung, so you do it, right? And no one else is there. And the fact that you will do it anyway, you'll try, and even though it may not sound technically the best, if the devotion is there, then that'll be glorious. A great example. Have you ever heard a kirtan from this German Maharaj, Jai Satchidananda Maharaj?
Nanda Maharaj,
Yeah. Technically speaking, if you go to a trained vocalist, they'll say that this fellow, he's tone deaf. You know, he can't carry a tune for anything.
Mm.
But when you listen to his kirtans,
Absolutely.
so much absorption, right?
Yes.
It's not about the technique. It's
Mm.
about the absorption. It's about the bhakti.
Yes.
And so we're so fortunate to actually have examples like that, to see where it's not about the technique. It's not about any of that, because those things are all material. It's about the spiritual. And yeah, so you go and you hear him and you feel the bhakti. Yeah. So that's how we have to see everything. We have to sort of peel our eyes off of the focus of the details of things. We have to stop thinking that the way we were trained to see this material world is actual reality. We have to stop seeing all these details as the goal and start seeing the principle of serving Krishna as the goal. And then when we do that, when we actually truly focus on serving Krishna, then it won't matter whether we're executing the details properly or not. And we see many examples of that. Pardon me. So to answer your question, yeah, we should try to do the things that are at least in our nature in the service of Krishna, because it's easier for us to do. But we should make sure we're focusing on that connection. And from time to time, yeah, we will do things that we're not good at, or even things that, you know, we don't like to do, especially if it's something that we don't like to do, because usually those are the things that we should do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we do those things for Krishna sees, oh, I know that Charachandra hates doing that, and he's doing it anyway because he sees that it needs to be done. So then there is reciprocation there in Krishna. And so it's a delicate balance, and it's better to do these things for ourselves than try to do it for others. Like, we don't want to say, oh, I see that devotee hates doing that, so this will be really good for them, I'm going to make them do that. That's not necessarily going to go the same way, you know. So it's a delicate balance between all of these things. But for ourselves, we could see that, you know, if we just show up, Krishna will show us what services need to be done, right? It's as simple as that. We show up and Krishna showing us, okay, this, you know, that could be done, this could be done. And then so we just do them. We do the services that Krishna gives us, whether it's in the form of the temple president coming and asking us to do it, or whether we're just seeing, like, you know, if I walk into the temple room and I see a big mess and no one's there cleaning it up, then okay, well, maybe I can clean it up. Now, of course, we want to determine that if that mess is like the middle of somebody building something and they're about to be right back, and if I clean it up, it's going to be a problem. You know, I want to make sure that's not the case, of course. But if there's, you know, just dirt on the floor, no one's, you know, making, you know, so anyway, like that. So yeah, it's one of those things. And I realize when I answer questions, it sounds really confusing, because I never give just like a sort of binary answer, because that's not what we can do. We can't do that, because that's the material way of doing things. So it's basically whatever can help you make that connection, that's what you should do. And so that service is going to change, and sometimes it's going to be something that you're not good at, and sometimes it's going to be something that you don't want to do. But regardless, if that connection is being made and you're doing something for Krishna, then that's going to go toward your spiritual advancement.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure. And I see Dronacharya Prabhu. Sorry that I took so long on that one, but you ever so patiently have your hand up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Such great points that you're bringing up here. I really, really appreciate it so much. The time that we can talk about and learn of these qualities. I had a technical question. So Yudhisthira Maharaj is the son of Kunti and Yamaraj.
Yes.
So would that mean, I guess, in this particular situation, that he would actually be the son of Aryama, based on the
So
timeline?
yeah, I asked that same exact question. Well, let's see, I guess it was about 15 years ago. I asked Bhakti Vijayapurna Swami, and he said basically what he said was it doesn't matter. It could have been Yamaraj because he can exist in two places, or it could have been Aryama because he's qualified. So yeah, obviously maybe some people don't catch why you asked that question. It was obviously Kunti when she called. She had that boon, and so Yudhishthira's father was Yamaraj, so she called Yamaraj. But Aryama was taking that post at that particular time because Yamaraj was Vidura, right? So it could be either way, and like I said, it doesn't matter because if it was Aryama, then he was taking the position of Yamaraj, so he had the same qualifications. But it also could have actually been Yamaraj. Now it wouldn't have been Vidura personally. He wouldn't have walked in and and taken care of it that way. But he could have, sometimes these great souls can be in two places at once. So it could have also just been Yamaraj like that properly. Did that answer your technical question?
Yeah, no, it does. It just kind of came up in my thoughts while we were reading that. It's like, wait a second. So you're right, it doesn't matter. Whether it's the post of Yamaraj or Yamaraj, the
either way, the qualification was there, and the qualities transferred. So yeah, I'm more of the mind, and like this isn't said with any authority whatsoever, but I'm more of I like to prefer to think that it was actually Yamaraj, not Vidura, but Yamaraj, but he sort of just did the thing like that. But it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter. But yeah, there are a few situations like that where you'll read through Bhagavatam and you'll see something like that. You'll pick up something like that and be like, oh, I wonder if that was because But yeah, a couple times like that. Another one, by the way, and this is a fun one. During the time when Hiranyakashipu was, basically when he took over the universe, right? He defeated Surya, and he defeated Indra. He defeated everyone. That particular period of Manu, there wasn't someone qualified to take the post of Indra. And so when there's no one qualified to take the post of Indra, Krishna does it. So Krishna in the form of Yajna, one of his Vishnu forms, was actually the post of Indra. So technically speaking, Hiranyakashipu defeated Vishnu in a way. Now, of course, he allowed that to happen because, he wanted the whole pastime to unfold the way that it did. But yeah, that's another one of these interesting tidbits where if you're paying attention, going along and then you could sort of pick up on these points. Anyway, so that's another one of those, Dronacharya. You're very perceptive, which is good.
I don't know about that, but it just this one I thought was an obvious one here. So I just want to thank you for answering that.
Sure.
And, it's helpful.
Sure. Anything else from anyone?
Okay, I guess if nobody has any more questions, Dronacharya Prabhu, you are there. Do you want to make any announcements?
Yeah, sure. Rath Yatra is 2 days away. Biggest festival of the year. It's a very enthusiastic time here in this kind of Philadelphia, and we hope to see all of you tonight and tomorrow, and making preparations for Lord Jagannath. So many things to do. flower garlands and flower decorations being made for the chariots. We use all fresh flowers. We don't use any artificial flowers. So there's lots of stringing. That's going to start today in the morning time, I believe, at the temple. So if you want to go over to the temple anytime during the day. Also, I think tonight we're going to start cutting up vegetables, and then all day tomorrow cutting up vegetables. Come after work, and if you can, come during the day. We encourage you tomorrow, if possible, to take the day off. We've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. Take the day off from work. We get a lot of days. Sometimes it's not possible. We understand. But if you do have that extra, personal day, you got 35 vacation days, and you say, well, maybe I'm just going to keep saving them. Well, now's a great day to use one, because the energy that you'll feel, the intensity of devotion, when we talk about it, it's really on display during these couple of days. And the devotees coming together is really something very special. And the more people that we have, the smoother it goes. And then the day of Rath Yatra, of course, we start, it's on Ben Franklin Parkway. The parade begins at 12 o'clock. But we hope that, you'll be involved in many of the various services that are there, serving out prasadam. Many of you already signed up for services, and decorating the carts, etc. So we hope to see you today, tomorrow, and then of course on Saturday as well. One thing, we will not be having the Prabhupada Leela night and the shloka recitation this evening, due to the activities preparing for Rath Yatra. So that will resume next Thursday. I do want to ask if there are any questions about Rath Yatra and services, just to take them in case anybody does have it. We'll just for a brief moment. Okay, there'll be an email going out as well. If you need to find information, you can always go to HK Parade. That's for Hare Krishna Parade, hkparade.com. And we have, and social media, there's a lot of information out there as well. Okay, that's my Rath Yatra commercial for today. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhischa kripasindhuvyeva patitanam pavanevyo vaishnavevyo namo namaha. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.